What's up, everybody? So, 40K has had several codices come out now, and really starting to see kind of a design stratagem, if you will, behind how the codices are in a certain respect. And I'm not talking about model release for some versus others, or the model kits themselves. That's a topic for another time. More so the codex itself and how it's kind of laid out. We see an approach that I feel is an approach of, I want to say common sense, but of something that makes sense given the backstory and the lore of the forces that are contained within these codices. And thus far, it's been working out pretty well. With forces where it makes sense, getting what some people refer to as the Space Marine effect or the chapter tactics effect, which I like. Some people have been stating that this is either lazy or watering things down, and I feel it's quite the opposite of watering things down. So I want to kind of give my thoughts on the Codex release kind of design it seems to be going on. Of course, post your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll be doing stuff on a video of my thoughts on models lately and so forth in a separate future video. So what we see, regardless of whether one codex comes out or multiple come out at the same time, is we're seeing kind of the approach of, would it make sense to do the chapter tactic effect or not? And we see the Grey Knights, it doesn't make sense to do it, so they didn't. The Death Guard, while you have different, as they call it, colors of contagion, it's still the Death Guard. They don't have different dogmas or tactics or anything like that either. We see it in the Space Marine Codex, of course, having chapter tactics. We see it in the Mechanicum book as well with Forge World Dogma. We see it in the Chaos book, as they call it, rules for battle-forged armies to represent the different legions or, traitor legions or Chaos Renegades, but we still have some stuff in there. We have it also shown to us in all the tidbits for, as I'm going to have to get used to calling it, Astra Militarum, although there'll always be the Imperial Guard to me and casually, but I guess for videos that confuse people, I'll just use Astra Militarum. We see that with their regimental doctrines. Their regimental doctrines really helping you flesh out a force that's more Armageddon Steel Legion, or, traditional Acadians, or the Catachans, or Votrian Firstborn, or what have you. This is cool stuff. And I say that because if you look at some of these forces thus far in the past, the Skitarii and the Mechanicus itself were two separate mini codices that were just kind of bland. While I liked what they were doing with the Skitarii, the rules were interesting, the war gear was cool and all that, there wasn't really anything to kind of differentiate your Ryza force or whatever to a Mars force or what have you. So having some Forge World Dogmas and the two codices combined together finally really is nice. They didn't have that in the past. The Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum, they felt kind of really bland. Well, you had the codex with stuff in there and you could take different things and kind of go your own path. There really wasn't anything to help further differentiate your force from somebody else's force contextually in the rules, like there are with chapter tactics and like we're getting now with regimental doctrines. So I like that it's more present in the building of your army than just being cosmetic purely, because it helps your force feel more your own and helps you really cycle it and tailor it into what you want. Now, that's great. So I think they're making a good path for their codex releases. Not every force is going to get the chapter tactics treatment. We saw that with the Grey Knights; they didn't get it. The Death Guard didn't get it. Some codices that won't get it as well will be things like the Thousand Suns book. That's probably going to be treated like the Death Guard book is, or it's not going to get it. The Death Watch, if they're their own self-contained codex again, it's probably not going to get it either. And then there are forces where it could go either way. The Tau Empire, for example, could go either way. With the very least, I'm hoping it'll differentiate Farset Enclave forces from Tau Empire forces in terms of some ways to, benefits and so forth and drawbacks for each. But past that, they could go one of two ways. or one of yeah, I guess one of two ways, three ways maybe. They could just have a Tau Empire and Farset Enclave. They could have Farset Enclave, then within the Tau Empire, you can go Mont Ka or Ka-Yun stratagems, and have that be different stylized things that help you differentiate your forces a bit. Or they could go Farset Enclave, then the or Enclave, not Enclave, Farset Enclave, and then go in and say, hey, here's the Tau Empire, and we're going to represent the different Sept worlds. So if you want to have Tau Sept forces, they have these things. If you want Vir-La Sept, you have these things. Now, the Vir-La, for example, are known to be particularly aggressive, so that could play into certain things or what have you. It could go either way with Tau because they're the greater good, right? So being part of the greater good, you're representing a greater good force, the Tau Empire, it could be very much just that, and then Farset Enclave. So who knows? But the potential is there. And another force that probably won't get anything specific, I think, will be the Tyranids. But the Tau could go either way. I think the Tyranids are probably going to go the route of Grey Knights and all that, where it's just the Codex, and you can, of course, with the Tyranid, collect the High Fleet as you wish. But that's really more of a color and cosmetic thing, like the Death Guard Codex has for their stuff. The reason I say that is it's a hive mind. I just think, making sense-wise, it wouldn't make sense to have them feel too radically different or too individualized. I just don't think it fits with the Tyranids. Plus, each different hive fleet was a probe and a different test by the hive mind. So if you keep it open-ended enough, I think, or quote-unquote generic enough without going chapter tactic style, I think it'll work just fine for Tyranids. But hey, you never know. Some of the forces I'm interested to see chapter tactic style of logic applied would be orcs, things like speed freaks, snake bites, the Goths, Bad Moon, and all that. The Eldar craft worlds with Uthway, Yandin, Samhain, and all that having very distinct feels, and maybe actually getting that feel back into their force and not just being a cosmetic fluff thing. While I doubt it'll happen, I'd like to see it for Necron dynasties, because then it could really kind of open up a bit, some potential there for the Necron forces. Maybe introduce the Silent King and his forces actually into the Codex proper, not just being the fluff. That would be kind of cool. But really, looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with future Codex releases. I think they got a good plan of attack for doing stuff like that. And yes, you could boil it down and say, well, this is just chapter tactics, but name something different for the forces. And sure, but I don't think personally that's a bad thing. I think you look at Astra Militarum, Eldar, Tau, without the supplemental book and all that, it is pretty basic. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but if they could, the potential and the capabilities there to add more fluff into your force and more character and flavor in there, and give you some bonuses and even some drawbacks and so forth to kind of help players go, well, I like this play style, so I'm going to go with Vir-La Sept, or I want to make up my own Sept world, and I like the way the Tau Sept stuff, edicts or what have you, are laid out, so I'm going to use that for my DIY force. I like that concept better, because one of the things that I really like about the Space Marine stuff, just looking at the Space Marine Codex, is a Raven Guard built force is going to, aside from be color scheme wise different, army list wise and play wise different from Imperial Fists and Ultramarines and Salamanders and what have you. And I like that. It adds variety and appeal to a codex beyond just what's laid within it, bare bone rules wise. But now looking at the chapter tactics, looking at your Forge Rule dogmas, looking at your Astra Militarum regimental doctrines and so forth, I think can really help spice things up. So I like the route they're going. It made this feel like chapter tactics renamed, and to a certain extent you could boil it down to that. I'm just hoping they continue doing it on a more common sense approach where it makes sense fluff wise for forces to have it. Obviously where it doesn't, such as Grey Knights, Death Guard, Death Watch, Thousand Suns, when those two come out, they won't have it. So if they keep that approach, I think we're looking at some pretty cool releases codex wise. all things considered. Obviously, I'm not talking about power gaming and super awesome units versus lame units and so on and so forth. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about the general layout. So that's my thoughts, just some random stuff I was thinking about the other day. What do you think? Are you concerned? Are you hopeful? I think it'd be cool to see Craft World stuff and Step World stuff to further help those fan bases be able to further identify and differentiate their forces with a particular theme, if it's collecting an established force or building your own DIY force to have a particular feel to make it different from your buddy's Tau or your buddy's Eldar or what have you. So, anyways, that's it. Thanks very much for sticking through it. I know it's just kind of a random thought thing, but hey, that's what happens. So, until the next one, take it easy.